Hello, my name is Charlene Catchpole and I work for Norfolk County Council as a Work Experience Officer. And this time I would like to talk to you about virtual work experience and how to plan ahead and get the very best from a virtual placement. So planning for virtual work experience is just as important as planning for a regular traditional work experience placement. What you need to do is slightly different, but it is just as important. So first and foremost, you need to check that the ICT equipment that you'll be using is compatible with the employer's systems of the company that you're going to join. So talk to your employer in advance about the different packages, software packages they use, and the different methods of communication that you'll need to use while you're on virtual placement. They should be able to give you lots of advice, especially if they have staff working from home at the moment. So do talk to them and they will give you help to set everything up. You can ask your employer and your school if they will help you do some trial runs using the IT equipment before your placement starts. So this is a really good idea just to make sure that everything is going to work as you expect it to and to avoid any last minute problems on the day. So you'll have already researched your employer and you'll hopefully know everything you can learn about them. But it's always a good idea to remind yourself just before you start placement. So have another look at their website, keep an eye on their social media, on their Twitter and LinkedIn, just to see if there's anything new that you need to know. There's usually a little bit of a time delay between securing a placement and actually taking up the placement. So it's always good to just refresh your memory. Keep a note of who you need to speak to in school if you have any problems at all with your ICT equipment, and also who you need to talk to at the employer. It may be that you have a mentor assigned to you at your company and they will help you with all of those kind of things. But if it's a larger company, say for instance Norfolk County Council, we have a whole ICT team, so you would probably need to speak to a specific person. So just check on that before your placement starts as well. So I think that's all of the technical side of things. So it really comes down to now how to prepare yourself for a placement. So a really good idea is to get plenty of sleep the night before, just to make sure that you wake up feeling refreshed and ready for the day ahead. When we're a little bit nervous about starting something new, it's better to get more sleep because you tend to cope with things better if you're not overtired. So do make sure that you get plenty of sleep the night before and that you wake up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready for your placement. So on day one, make sure you set your alarm nice and early. So if you're going to start at say 9 a.m, I would say set your alarm nice and early to give you time to have a shower and eat breakfast before you start work experience. And also, very importantly, make sure you log on well in advance of your start time. So if you're starting at 9 a.m, make sure you're logged on by 8:30 at the latest, just to make sure that everything's working correctly and that you've not got any last minute teething problems with your IT equipment. It does happen, so make sure that you give yourself plenty of time. And remember, this is a virtual placement, so it may be that you're going to carry it out while you're in school, in a quiet space in school, or you may be carrying out your placement from home. But it is a good idea to make sure that you're presented and dressed appropriately. You may have meetings in your calendar while you're on work experience, which you can prepare for, but it may be that someone will phone you on Microsoft Teams or on Zoom, on Skype, and you may not be expecting that phone call. So make sure that you're dressed appropriately and you're well presented and quite smart as well. It does really help you feel more professional and feel focused on what you're doing, and it feels much more structured. So it also creates an excellent impression with the employer too, and it makes you look like you want the placement and that you're giving it your very best, and that you're making the most of the opportunity. Now, I mentioned it a moment ago, but feeling nervous. Don't worry if you feel nervous. We all feel nervous when we do something new. It doesn't matter how old we get. Whenever we try a new experience or a new job, there's always going to be that feeling of being quite nervous because you don't know what to expect. So don't worry about that. It is perfectly natural. My colleague Lindsay, who's a guidance advisor, has put together an excellent video on first day nerves. If you head over to the Help You Choose website, you'll be able to see Lindsay's video. It's called First Day Nerves and how to cope with them. So do go over and have a watch of that. It really is a big help, whatever the age. It's a great help. And we'll give you the website address at the end of this video for that. Also remember that your employer may be a little bit nervous. It sounds like a silly thing to say, but it may be the first time that they've offered virtual work experience. It may be the first time they've offered work experience. So they may also be feeling a little bit nervous as well. So don't worry about that. You'll all help each other through it, I'm sure. So in presenting yourself, the most important thing really is to be polite, keen and interested. So as long as you look like you're really keen and you want to learn, that will really create a good impression with your employer. Do keep a pen and paper beside you to note down any questions. It may well be that you'll have an induction into the company on your first day via video link, and you may be able to ask questions as you go along. If not, save up your questions, jot them down as they come into your mind, and then ask them at the end of your induction or at an appropriate time with the employer. And don't worry about not knowing how to do something. Your employer won't expect a huge amount from you, to be fair. They will just be happy if you listen and ask questions and try your very best. If you're not sure that you've understood, please do ask again. It doesn't matter if you ask more than once or twice. It's always important to ask questions if you're not sure. Don't sit and suffer in silence and worry about it. It's always good to ask. Tell your supervisor how you like to learn, and they can help you do this as well. So if you're a visual learner or you like to learn by trying something, then if you tell your supervisor, I'm sure they will be able to help you learn things in the best way for you as well. So with a virtual placement, very much as with a regular placement where you joined an employer at their premises, it's a good idea to minimize the distractions you have while you're doing your work. So when you're doing virtual work experience, especially from home, it could be quite easy to allow yourself to have too many distractions. So you may think, oh, I can have the TV or the radio on in the background, but it is a good idea really to treat it as you would a regular face-to-face placement. So if it was acceptable in the workplace, it probably isn't acceptable in a virtual placement. So make sure that you minimize distractions. Don't have your mobile phone beside you all the time. Perhaps put it out of the way or put it on silent during your working day. Also, make sure that you take regular breaks, make sure that you eat and drink regularly, and make sure you have a regular sort of walk around from your screen. If the work that you're doing is very sort of focused on your screen, do make sure you look away and you get up and just walk around for a few moments. It is really important to do that for your own health. You'll probably find your employer will talk to you about lunch breaks, coffee breaks, that kind of thing before your placement even starts. And they may also want you to set an out of office message or put a message on Microsoft Teams to say that you're on your lunch break each day. So you'll need to speak to them about the time that they expect you to be on lunch break and whether there's anything you need to do to tell others your whereabouts. Now, if you have any problems while you're doing virtual work experience, very much the same as with a regular placement, if you were joining an employer at their premises, you need to let your employer know if you're not well enough to work. So if you're sick and you can't carry out your placement, ring your employer as early as possible on the day, let them know, and then ring the school and let them know what's happened. And you need to do this each day that you're unwell so that everybody knows where you are and whether you're working or not. If you feel ill while you're on your placement, tell your supervisor, don't just log off. Do make sure that you tell them and get their permission. And they'll obviously want to help you and make sure that you're okay. So tell them that you're not well and they can talk to you about whether you can log off and sort of perhaps try again the next day if you're better. And again, you need to let your school know as well. So always make sure you keep your school informed. They have a duty of care for you, even if you're carrying out your work experience placement from home. They still need to know what you're doing and where you are and how you are. If you have an appointment while you're on work experience, perhaps a dentist or a doctor or hospital appointment, make sure you explain this to your supervisor as early as you can. So if you know in advance of the appointment, sort of several weeks in advance, make sure you tell your employer well before your placement starts. But if it's a last minute appointment that's come through or one that you need in an emergency, again, make sure you tell your employer and show them the appointment card if you can, or the appointment letter from hospital. As I said, it's very important the employer knows where you are as well. So if they're expecting you to be at work between 9 and 5 on a particular day and you need to be away for a doctor's appointment, you need to let them know when that is. So people always ask us what to do if the placement isn't what they expected. So We would always say give it plenty of time. It takes a while to settle into work experience, and an employer needs to get to know you. And to be fair, that's a little bit more difficult to do in a virtual placement because they're not actually seeing you face to face and spending time with you. So it may be that your placement starts a little bit slowly and you may not be given too much responsibility to start with, but that's just because the employer needs to get a little bit of an idea of the type of person you are and what level of responsibility you can cope with. So if you have any problems at all, talk to your employer in the first instance. If you want to talk to somebody in school, that's a great idea. You can do that before you talk to the employer. If you don't feel that you want to sort of approach it just yourself, they can perhaps even help you as well and speak to the employer. Do also involve your family. If your parent or carer can help you, talk it over with them and try to decide on the best course of action. Everybody wants it to be a success for you, yourself, your school and the employer. So you can all work together to make sure that you resolve any issues at all. So if anything goes wrong or you feel very unhappy in placement, again, talk to your supervisor or your mentor or whoever you feel most comfortable talking to at your employer and explain how you feel and look for a solution together. Do ring your school work experience coordinator if you're still unhappy. And if your parents are concerned, if they talk to school as well, then that's the very best way to approach things and then they can help you work things out. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. Employers will usually have a very clear policy on the use of IT equipment. So if you're using ICT equipment to carry out your work experience placement and it's kit that you usually share with somebody else or another family member or somebody else in school, remember to save any work that you're working on for your company in a separate folder which only you can access to make sure that it's kept confidential and kept safe as well and isn't accidentally erased as much as anything. It's a good idea to password protect your work as well. So again, that just helps keep it confidential and professional. Do observe your employer's policy on internet use and social media use during working hours. So make sure that you're not on the internet when you shouldn't be during work time. If you want to perhaps browse the internet at lunchtime, just have a word with your employer, make sure that's okay with them if you're using their equipment. Chances are you'll be using your own ICT equipment at home anyway or at school. But again, you need to follow school's policy if you're carrying your placement out from there. Remember that employers can access social media as well. So we would always advise you not to post anything about your work experience unless you have permission from the employer. And one last thing to remember, it's been a really strange year for everybody and your employer will have had to have made a lot of changes because of the COVID pandemic. And you may find that a lot of these changes are still taking some time to settle in. It's certainly the case for your school. I'm sure there's been a lot of large changes at your school and there have for us working at Norfolk County Council as well. So the procedures take a while for everybody to get used to. Some of the changes might have been quite major and you may find that some employers have perhaps had to put staff on furlough or have perhaps even downsized and reduced their staff numbers, and they may have a lot of staff working from home now that were previously office based. So everyone's really getting used to these new ways of working and getting used to the new systems of working remotely. So make sure you follow all of your employer's guidelines and just try and have a little patience because it is quite difficult to get used to all of these new ways of working. And another thing to mention as well is that communication can be a bit more difficult at the moment because it does feel a little bit odd to a lot of us communicating sort of over Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams. So just be patient and just recognise that other people are probably struggling to get settled into new ways of working as well. So make sure you give everything a really good shot and be patient. And if there's anything that you're not sure of, always make sure you ask your employer or your school, and people will always be very happy to help you. I think that covers everything. So it just left for me to wish you the very best of luck, and I hope you have an excellent work experience placement. Thanks very much for watching.